I didn't leave. I'm right here. Okay, I wanted to turn the light on, so get a little bit of lighting in here. Okay, good evening, everybody. It's Joe Chaffee on this Tuesday night, election night, and it's just been a little bit crazy. Election night is kind of like Christmas Day or Christmas Eve in newsrooms. It's just crazy. It gels up with excitement, people running around all over the place, coverage, making sure every corner of every spot is covered news-wise, and of course we get fed, which is, the bottom line. And for weather people, unless there's some kind of severe weather action going on, this is a good night for us because we actually have very little to do once we get past the 7 o'clock hour. Usually polls start polls starting to close, so we just basically relax and take it easy while everybody else is going nuts, and we get to eat with everybody else. So I hope everybody had a great day. That's the bottom line. Very, very interesting pattern going forward. A lot of things happening. We've been, talking about the weather system for the end of the week, and we're also talking about the cold air for next week, and the possibility that there could be a storm that forms to bring in that cold air, and where is it going to be? How's this trough axis going to set up? And how important this is for forecasters to pay attention to the overall trend. I can tell you this, given the way weather systems have played out over the last couple of weeks, it would seem to me that if this is the pattern that holds as we go into the winter and get deeper into December, January, and February, if we keep seeing these lows going by to our south and east, and cold air with highs to the north trying to lock in, even though there really is no blocking, so the highs do eventually have been pulling out. But if you do get a little bit of blocking, you get the high to kind of hold in a bit, it's going to make for some interesting snow situations down the road. So that's why we kind of I've always liked the month of November, because it sets the table to some degree and gives you some clues going forward. So why don't we go from there and see what's happening. First off, as far as what's going on this evening, we do have a little bit of weather left happening, and there's still some rather hefty shower and thunderstorm activity moving through the eastern Carolinas. This is where the Storm Prediction Center has the one area of marginal risk left. One of the things that happened throughout much of New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, into southern New England, we never really got into the warm sector. The marine layer was incredibly stubborn, and as a result, you wound up with some heavy rains that broke out this morning as the warm front tried to go through, and it just zapped the atmosphere, so that when the front moved by, which it's doing now, we are seeing the last of the showers moving out of the of my area at the moment, but they never really did get to fire up into any kind of strong thunderstorm activity. The marine layer is a killer, and this was an instance where the models tried to push that warm front and the surface low that went by to our south and moved it up to the northeast, tried to bring in the warmer air, turn the winds around more to the south or south-southwest. It never really happened. So as a result, much of the activity has been further to the south, and we're seeing that on the radars tonight. In fact, we can go to that radar shot, and we'll bring up the national radar here. And here we go. So I'm going to start off with my neck of the woods. You can see the area in the northeast, the back edge of that rain, almost done. I'll just refresh the page a little bit, see if we can get a fresh radar on this. But this is actually running about 20 minutes behind. So the back edge is even further to the east. We're coming up on 7:20, so as always, if you're watching this on a replay, make sure you check the latest radars and any warnings that are up for your particular area by going to weather.gov. Here's the southern trail of showers and storms. Not the most impressive line in the world running through eastern North Carolina. It's kind of broken up a bit here and there, and it picks up some cells in parts of South Carolina, down into southern Georgia, and over the Florida Panhandle. And that really about does it with respect to thunderstorm activity. We also have some trailing along the Gulf Coast. Now, bear in mind that this front that is coming through in the east is going to stall out in the Gulf, and that is going to set the table up for Friday, seeing a little bit of rain here throughout parts of Missouri, and also some scattered activity on up through the northern lakes. So that covers it with respect to the radar tonight. And I think now we're going to go, we'll go to the Weather Prediction Center's next 7-day forecast, where the rainfall, now of course today's is not included in this. This is all, that part of the equation is done. But the rainfall from tonight, 8 p.m., through next Wednesday. So this includes whatever we wind up getting early next week. We do continue to show rainfall amounts of another 2 or 3 inches from coastal New Jersey through eastern New England, and then lesser amounts as you go west. And by the way, you know, some of the amounts that we're starting to see, these half-inch plus amounts up in western PA and on up into western New York State, could very well be in the form of some lake effect snow at some point with these weather systems that are going to be impacting the area. Not so much for Friday into Friday night, and there will be some lake effect stuff going on Saturday, but particularly I'm talking about what we could see seeing early next week. Here's a satellite loop tonight, and we're going to definitely pick out that cold front running up and down the East Coast, and the southern end of that front going to be stalling out over northern Florida and right along the Gulf Coast back through Texas, and then eventually we're going to get some energy coming into Texas in the next 24 to 36 hours to set the table for our weekend our system for Friday into Friday night, early Saturday. So where'd you go? There you go. So let's we'll bring this back up, and we'll get to the GFS for this evening. And I'm going to start with the upper air. Maps, by the way, as always, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. And here we have the GFS upper air tonight. You can see there's a kind of a broad west-southwest flow here in the east as this short wave goes by. And here comes the next one for Friday. Now notice that you're seeing this dig pretty far to the west. It digs down into northern Minnesota, into the western lakes, and swings around. So the trough trying to get into the east. Looks like the axis of the trough is right along 90 degrees west. That's going to bode well for places like Chicago and Detroit and St. Louis if the trough position is around 90 or so as far as the winter is concerned. We don't know if that's the case, but I'm just pointing that out. It's been a long time since we've seen winters with the trough, mean trough position setting up right down along 90 west. And then that lifts out. Now we're going to get into some cold air here for Saturday and Sunday, particularly for Sunday into the eastern part of the U.S. But it's the shot that comes in behind this that, of course, we're all going to be paying attention to. And here comes the animal digging down from central Canada into Lake Winnipeg, dropping into Minnesota. Again, as each model run has passed, we see this trough x-axis getting sharper, deeper, and further left. So this really does open the door for a system to try to come up the East Coast in some fashion. Now the trough doesn't, it pivots down and around in kind of in a broad fashion. It doesn't whip around very, very quickly. So it's stacked. It does have a bit of a progressive look here. That would perhaps argue, or at least explain, the reason why the GFS on the 18Z run has a low a little bit further out to the east and offshore versus the 12Z, but it's still it's still trying to shift the overall trough axis to the west, and I don't think we're quite done yet with seeing the model adjustments. One of the reasons we're seeing this happen, if you look off the southeast coast of the United States, there's an upper high there. You just kind of see the nose of it on the 162 hour here south of Bermuda. And that ridge is a little stronger on every model run. And one of our regulars and one of my Patreon members, Stephen Franco, asked me about that ridge. And it's a very, very delicate balance. You have to have enough of a ridge there in order for weather systems to move up the East Coast close enough to the coast. If the ridge is too strong, then you wind up with a trough further to the west and a low that tracks inland of the coast, or even further west than that. If the ridge is not strong enough and the flow is too flat, then you're going to wind up with a system much further to the south and east and passing well offshore. So it's kind of this delicate balance game you play. In the meantime, while this is going on, you'll notice there's a very strong ridge in the west, and that is driving this to dig as far south as it is. If you follow the flow from Lake Winnipeg in Canada and follow those lines, that's the jet stream. Your cold air masses are going to want to drive more southward than eastward until that trough lifts out. So areas in the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, down into the Tennessee Valley and into the southeast and into Florida, into northern Florida, you're going to taste this cold air for sure. It's going to make its way pretty far south. The trough then swings to the east after that and then pulls away to the northeast. There's a little bit more energy in that northwest flow, so it might keep it on the chilly side through the end of next week. And we still have a series of weather systems after that. Of course, here at this point, we're into the long range. I think what might happen is you might see a brief warm-up going into Thanksgiving week, maybe for a day or so, as the pattern kind of rearranges itself. Now, where we wind up with this, I don't know in the longer term. I think right now we're just going to kind of stay focused on what's happening for the end of this week and then for next week. So here's the surface map on the GFS, and here's your trailing cold front moves out. High pressure builds in. It's cold air, by the way. If you look at the air going back up through the Great Lakes and into the northern plains, it's pretty cold. The problem is that the trough is not amplified enough. So you're not seeing that cold air really push all the way down into the mid-Atlantic and southeastern part of the U.S. It does get cool, but it doesn't really get cold. Each one of these systems brings in slightly colder air. Now, that front stalling out across the southeast coast down into the Gulf states. So now you've got this energy coming eastward. The next trough digging down and around, taking low pressure up the west side of the Appalachians. By Friday afternoon, you've got a surface low in eastern Ohio. And there's probably some kind of secondary low that's going to develop somewhere along off the Carolina or Virginia coast with this. And you can see that the model, the GFS, does have it reflected with a low right near Atlantic City by Friday evening. This is going to mean for raw, rainy conditions Friday into Friday night, kind of like what we just went through, except that that wave keeps on moving. We don't have another system behind this, so by Saturday, weather conditions should improve. Now, as far as some snow is concerned, I think it might be cold enough that places well up into upstate New York and into northern New England could see some wet snow at the start. And on Saturday into Saturday night, there may very well be some lake effect snows going on off Lake Ontario into north central New York State with a low in that position. You see it up there, the 992 low, north of the St. Lawrence River Valley. And then that moves on up to the northeast. Nova Scotia gets a big rain out of this. We talked about this morning. See some heavy rains moving in there late Friday night and on Saturday with the front swinging through. And now we get colder for this weekend, and it will be, again, it'll be colder than the shot that we are going to get Wednesday and Thursday. Now here comes the setup for Monday into Tuesday. The next high, part of that high is going to try to find its way up into New England, like the last bunch of highs have. And then you've got low pressure that comes out of the Gulf off the southeast coast and then runs up northward. Now, we're not sure of the position here because the trough axis is going to be key. The European model, just as a comparison for Tuesday morning, going to bring that up and show you that the European model has the low by Tuesday morning almost in the same spot, which is kind of interesting. And then it's very much like the GFS. They match up. It's one of these rare instances here where the models actually match up pretty well hang on, no wonder it matches up because it's still the GFS. I beg your pardon. My mistake. I thought so, that the European had the low further west. the European's trough axis is further west. And as a result, the surface low here is in central Maryland rather than being offshore. This would cut back on some snow amounts if this is correct. And I think there's a very valid argument to be made that since the models are continuing to trend westward with the axis of the trough, that we might see that continue for another couple of runs. So we may not be done with the westward shift. The GFS actually went a little bit to the east on this current run, but it might do one or two more shifts to the west. We'll see. But it's ultimately going to be decided on how this trough sets up. Now, from this, by the way, from Monday night into Tuesday, you're going to be looking at some snow and rain at the start, but then colder air does find its way into parts of West Virginia and Pennsylvania, again, assuming that this is correct, and then that would lead up to some snows in initially elevation-driven areas in upstate New York, and then gradually it'll probably be cold enough to bring that snow down to lower levels, and we're going to have lake effect action later Tuesday night, and into Wednesday of next week. This is a very, very cold shot of air for this time of year that moves into the eastern part of the U.S. You can see the pushes all the way down into South Florida with these north and northeast isobars to going south of Miami. That's gonna really cool things down in the southeast and in Florida, with the high going into northern Louisiana. You can check out some of the temperatures, for example. And this is supposedly at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday. You've got temperatures in central Florida barely in the middle 50s, middle and upper 50s, and then lower 60s in South Florida. That's cold. And in fact, if you look throughout the southeast and down through the Gulf states, you're talking about temperatures that are going to be in the 40s at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and up around the Ohio Valley and back through the Great Lakes. Look at these highs. I mean, that's really cold for this time of year to see highs only in the low and middle 20s. The cold air, temperatures below freezing by Thursday morning, down into the Florida Panhandle. So this is going to be a hard freeze situation for many areas in the eastern part of the United States. The early shots of cold air certainly were able to penetrate somewhat to the south, but this is going to be full blast all the way to the south. I want to go back, by the way, to the upper air with the European here so that we can look at the differences between the two models. So let me just back up. So here's your trough on Tuesday on the European. It actually has got almost a full north-south trough here. A neutral tilted trough. This is why it has a surface low as far to the west as it did. And the GFS, on the other hand, has the bottom of that trough deeper, okay? And as a result, it's got a more of a bowlish look here in the southeast, and this is why it has its surface low further to the east. The difference is a couple of 100 miles, but we're going to have to resolve that because the further west track of the European will probably cut back on snow amounts. The east track would increase it on the GFS. And let me just say, by the way, as far as the coast is concerned, okay, and I've said this a couple of times already, you know, if this were a month from now, it might be a different ball game for a lot of areas, but it's just too early, and you don't have, if we were going to get the cold air this weekend, was going to be a substantial push of cold air. If that cold air mass, instead of dropping down into the western lakes and down into the Ohio Valley, if you had more of that cold air pushing into the east, then maybe we could figure out a way with this kind of a setup where you might see some surprise first snows in a lot of places, but I don't think that that's the case here. You've got to have it really, if you look back at the handful of times that it snowed this early, it's always been with an almost perfect scenario, and where you've got at least the core of the cold air moves overhead over the northeast, and it really isn't doing that. The core of the cold air is moving further to the west. So that is that is, I think, the primary difference with regards to this weather system going forward. Now, if you want to take an early look at snow amounts, we can do that. And I'm going to break it down a little bit. And I think we can, you know what, let me start wider, because there are going to be some snow implications here for this first weather system for some places other than the Northeast. So why don't we take a look? And with this low coming out the way it is, there will be some snows across parts of Kansas, Missouri, into southern Nebraska, and then also I think we might have a scenario of seeing the first snowflakes. Doesn't look like accumulating snow, but we could see the first snowflakes certainly in Chicago and Detroit out of this. And you'll notice that the GFS does produce some wet snows, and some of them on the heavier side, Friday night into Saturday across upstate New York and into northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and particularly in through interior Maine. We also have a little bit of patchy heavier snow in parts of western Pennsylvania. This is, this is a situation where it's Tuesday, we're talking about Friday into Saturday, and it's the first one of the season. My confidence level on this is not that far above zero. So I want to give it, let's look at the next couple of model runs. But we've had a few of them that showed this idea. Now I want to switch over. I'm going to use the 24-hour snowfall map so we can sort of separate the two systems here. And this is the one for later Monday night into Tuesday, where you wind up with another significant snowfall running through northeastern New York, through Vermont, New Hampshire, and interior Maine. So these areas are going to do well. And then when the system goes by, you kick in some lake effect, and that's what you're seeing here as we move into Wednesday. You kick into some lake effect off of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and also seeing some accumulating snows down the Blue Ridge Mountains, Johnny Quest, or at least on the West Virginia side, and into the Smokies. So some snow extending pretty far south here if the models are close to verifying. I don't think they're going to be that far off at this stage for the first event. The second event, I think, is still pretty much in flux. But, I got to get the first system under my belt, the first couple of weather systems under my belt to get a feel for this. It's really, I think it's kind of like, it's the football player who has been not playing during the off season and then comes back in July and they play those first few preseason games and the games look incredibly sloppy. And that's because, they haven't played in 6 or 7 months. And you're kind of starting over again until you get into the groove. And I think that's where I'm at this point right now. I want to see how this all plays out, and I'm going to be extra cautious in terms of what my forecast is going to be with all of this as we go forward. So I'm going to come to you guys now in the chat board. Just let me remind you real quick. There are additional posts covering all the weather changes that are underway on my Patreon platform, and it's a good way to support what I'm doing here on YouTube. But with my YouTube channel, you get access to all my website posts. You also get access to posts that don't get on the website. And we also do, or try to do, at least the last 2 days, it's really been trying to do because of some signal issues that I think I finally got resolved today. But we also try to do a live video for Patreon members, exclusively for Patreon members, and we usually do that during the morning at 9:30. So if you're interested, I will put up a link for that, and you can take a look at it. It's only $2 a month for the subscription to my Patreon platform, and there are some higher tiers in case you're someone that needs a little extra help when it comes to winter weather. So appreciate those of you that have joined, and thank you for your support. So here's the link on the chat board. So, collective hello to everybody tonight. Scott Briller, if you want a coastal snowstorm here, we want the high to be in northern New England when the storm comes up the coast. Well, and you want some of that high to hang in there. This time of year, you're going to have more than just the high hanging in. You're going to have it really locked in because remember, you're still fighting an ocean now that is pretty warm and not down to levels. You start to get to the latter part of December, the ocean becomes less of a problem. I will tell you this. If you've got the right surface set up in terms of the wind direction, you can overcome that warm ocean. I've seen it happen a number of times in storms during the month of December. It is a little tougher. Where you wind up probably not getting as much snow with these smaller systems. So if you look through the month of December, there have been a number of big snowstorms in the second half of the month, and they have occurred with a relatively warm ocean. It's just that everything else in the atmosphere is compensating for that warm water. Whereas when you get one of these sort of weaker systems to come along, then it becomes a little tougher. The warm air has an easier chance of advecting into the coast and inland. Sometimes with the stronger systems, if you've got them taking the right track and the wind direction is northeast, north-northeast, like 02, 03, then you could wind up getting plenty of snow without any worries of a changeover. Ethan Bean, the negative AO, the Arctic Oscillation, setting up shop early into the middle part of next week to bring the upper system involving the eastern U.S. You're absolutely correct. We are seeing higher than normal heights and higher than normal pressures across the Arctic region, which is basically suppressing the jet stream much further to the south. We don't have any blocking, so weather systems are moving along. So that's just the way it is. And I don't see the NAO becoming a factor anytime soon. But, you've got the Arctic Oscillation being negative, and that is really driving all of this going forward. Okay, so just running through some more of your questions and comments here. By the way, I noticed a few of you who haven't been on for a while, Cullen, Garo Vestas, Vetsis, I'm sorry, on board tonight. Good to see you guys both here. My buddy Chris Alley, good to see you. And of course the regulars that are on here every night, Johnny Quest, David Schwartz, Charlie Baker, and everybody else. Always good to see you guys here. What do I see for this winter in southeast Michigan? Asked Kathy Albano. Well, I wonder what kind of clues we're going to derive over the next week or two with this system, and how it sets up for your area. Where in Michigan are you, by the way? Are you on the lower? Are you in southern Michigan? Are you in the Upper Peninsula? Are you up, in northern Michigan? There's the weather. It does differ, especially when it comes to snow. I don't, right now, it's sort of a mystery to me as to how this is all going to play out for the Great Lakes. But we'll see if maybe the next week or so we can gather some clues. I'll be curious to see what you wind up getting with the system coming in for Thursday night, Friday, and then again for early next week. And it is going to get cold by you, by the way. Johnny Quest, you hope that it doesn't freeze and crack all the roads to pieces. I don't think it's going to be that deep a freeze from this shot. It's a little early for that. But on the other hand, you'd be surprised how quick the ground does dry up and how quick that water drains. So let's hope that we don't have any issues with regards to that in your neck of the woods. Mystery Gamer, the Wi-Fi went down at 6:57 and you missed it. I can sympathize with that. When I was doing my Patreon live stream this morning, and I was my Wi-Fi was taking hits, and my signal kept going in and out, and it's been an ongoing problem for the last couple of days. But I was able to blow out the wireless router, and it seemed that when I ran a test live stream after that, it worked for 10 minutes without any serious issues. So, yes, thank you for that model you had that glitched last night. I've been waiting to see that shot for 20 years, the Bombogenesis over Georgia. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm kind of at a loss, though. Which model are we talking about, Chad? Remind me, okay? Because I think I might have forgotten. Tracy Turbin, big smiles back at you. By the way, also I saw, was Delvin on tonight? Are you there, buddy? I saw you up. John Trabacchino was on. Israel was on earlier. Dio Nan Kumar, good to see you as always. And no, I guess Delvin didn't make it tonight. Okay, you're south of Detroit, so it's always a little iffy with the rain-snow line for your area. It's not as iffy as it is for me, but it does get iffy from time to time. If we wind up with that trough more into the east, you might do quite well this winter in terms of cold and snow, if that's what you're looking for. Okay, I don't always know how to answer that question because, I sort of assume the folks that are on here are the weather weenies. So when they are, I kind of answer them those kind of questions in a positive way. Oh, the GFS from last night. Okay, gotcha. Well, we are going to see another low come up the coast with regards to this weekend and then again early next week. Mahogany 2680, nice to see you this evening. I think you were around this morning too for the problematic live stream for the Patreon members. Chad Crawford, JFS analysis tends to be specifically storms and precip. I'm sorry. Okay, so with respect to what though? I'm a little confused. GFS surface analysis tends to be specifically storms. Well, okay, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, the surface is going to show you the surface. When I show you the surface, you see where the lows and highs are, and also you see where the precip is in terms of measurable precip. Thank you. Appreciate the support, Mahogany. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so look, folks, it's a busy night election-wise. So, and besides, with all the food in here, I want to go grab some more. The storms overnight in here in Tennessee delayed midterm voting as power outages were throughout the Knoxville area. Okay, so breaking election, European 54%, GFS 46%. With how many? With what percent of the models are in? Scott Briller. All right, folks, we're going to call it a night at this point. We got a little bit of a late start, and I want to take care of a few other things. I just want to tell you, by the way, the app is just about here, okay? There's just a couple of little things, and I want to make sure everything is working correctly, and if it is, should be able to release it in the next couple of days. Keep your fingers crossed. It's going to be available first for those of you on Android. We're going to have to wait to see what Apple decides to do with this, but the Android from Google is ready. So the app will be coming out. It's going to be focused on the New York area, the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Long Island area, but you might want it if only so that you could see some of the other posts that might be up there. I can't set it up for. One of the things that makes this app a bit different than other weather apps is that you're actually going to get my forecast day to day. So I can't really be sitting there and writing forecasts for every part of the country. So that would make make me a very, very busy man and probably a very crazy one. So the forecast part of it is just going to be focused on the New Jersey to southern New England area and everybody in between, but there will be other things on there that you might find interesting, and if you want to give it a whirl, it'll be there and it'll be free, which is good. Free is good. There will be a Joe and Joe show tonight on Facebook at 9:15, and hopefully we won't be as subdued as we were last night, because both of us were all of a sudden got hit with a big wave of tiredness. Israel, I did not get a chance to see the Euro monthlies on Weather US. I will get an opportunity. I've got some downtime coming this weekend, and I'm just going to sit down and take a look at it, take care of a few things, and I will go in and look at weather.us. That is a great website if you want to get the in-between stuff with the European instead of just the standard every 24 hours. Take a look at it. Weather.us. Okay. Okay, so you could use it for Lakewood, Israel. I'm sure it'll be fine. You'll be able to use it there. Let's see. Also, don't forget, for those of you in New Jersey, tomorrow night I will be at the Bayonne Library in Bayonne, New Jersey at 7 p.m. And if you can't make it, I will try and live stream the library talk. It's always a dicey proposition in terms of the signal and in terms of being able to set it up. I don't really know if it'll work until I actually do it. So I promise that I will try. If you see it there at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, then you know that it worked, okay? And the Joe and Joe Show tonight at 9:15, and that pretty much covers it. So everybody have a great evening. Once again, if you're interested, take a look at my platform on Patreon. The link is there up on the chat board. You can subscribe for as little as $2 a month. And thank you for those of you who have joined up. And by the way, we also do have one other way, especially with the holidays coming. If you're doing your holiday shopping, you can use the link here to my what I call my Joe Stradamus portal on Amazon. And we're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. You shop on Amazon, you get your stuff. Amazon throws me back some coin out of their pocket, not yours, and I get a few cigars in my Christmas stocking. And that's a great, easy way of supporting what I'm doing here. And again, if you're going to shop, you're going to shop anyway on Amazon. Why not do it through my portal? Thank you very much. I appreciate those of you who have done that. And have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you either later tonight on the Joe and Joe Show or maybe tomorrow night from the Bayonne Library in Bayonne, New Jersey.